Welcome to our weekly webinar series on healthcare research and innovation landscape in Pakistan. This is a series started by Apna Merit Committee. My name is Danish Bhatti. I'm a chair for Apna Merit 2021. I'm a movement disorders neurologist, faculty at University of Nebraska Medical Center. And I have a strong interest in education and some interest in research, but as part of the Merit Committee, one of our mandate is to promote and collaborate in research nationally in Pakistan. So this year, in 2021, we decided to focus on research collaborations as our primary priority. Every year, we try to identify something. Last year was family practice, family medicine, and this year it is research for us. So as part of that, we decided to go through a learning exercise and meet with all the leadership in Pakistan in research, both on government side, on the private side, on the academic side, on the commercial side, to try to figure out what is the landscape, what is healthcare challenges, what is the innovation going on in Pakistan. And then I propose that rather than doing this closed behind the door meetings, why don't we have these open sessions every week and invite and give opportunity to audience both from Apna membership in North America and Pakistani community in Pakistan to join us, listen to our speakers. We learn from them, and they can learn with us. We can ask questions, and we can understand what's going on in Pakistan. This series of webinars will culminate with an international research conference, Merit Healthcare Innovation Research Conference in Pakistan, which has been decided for December 22nd, 2021. All of you are invited and are welcome to join us. We will be working on an agenda to summarize all that we have been doing this year and learning and looking at ways forward. It will be hosted graciously by Rawalpindi Medical University and will be in collaboration with HAC and NIH. So that is a work in progress for us, and we're looking forward to it. So let me start with these webinars. As you know, that some house cleaning rules, these webinars are approved for CME, which is ACCME accredited AMA Category 1 CME that is being offered by APNA, along with their the persons who conduct the actual certification, which is a private company, AMEDCO, but this is an APNA approved and APNA offered CME. The CME costs have been very graciously sponsored by APNA RISA committee. So I'm eternally thankful to the Research, Education and Scientific Affairs Committee, the committee chair, RISA committee chair, Professor Adil Butt, who actually also has now a role in NIH board. So, that all the stars are lining up and connections are building. So Dr. Adil Butt is actually the person who is sponsoring all the CME activities and costs related to these activities. And I'm very thankful for him and his committee. The CMEs are offered once a quarter, so every 12 webinars. First quarter CMEs have been issued, and the next CMEs will be after 12 webinars are completed. And we do keep track of all the attendance and reach out to you for the process to get the CME. And so you don't have to worry about it. It's my pleasure for today to invite our speaker for today, a luminary in the field, talking about a really, really important concept that I have been asking and trying to understand from the early discussions in research. Our topic or title for today is a National Ethical Review Board, one of the cornerstone of research in any part of the world, and is one of the key challenges even here in US when we try to do clinical trials and try to do innovation and early research. So protecting our patients, our participants, is the most important part of research, and not finding the answer. It's making sure that it's done properly, ethically, and in a right way. So talking about this concept is our speaker for today, Dr. Huma Qureshi, Tamgha Imtiaz. Dr. Qureshi is a gastroenterologist and national focal point of hepatitis. Dr. Qureshi has recognized for her services in medical research and is decorated with several awards, Tamgha Imtiaz. She has over 140 research publications. She was the executive director for Pakistan Medical Research Council and is a focal point for viral hepatitis. She conducted the landmark survey on the prevalence of hepatitis B and C in general population for Pakistan, and she has developed the National Hepatitis Strategic Framework of 2017 to 21 for Pakistan and is member of WHO's viral hepatitis E, B, and C testing and treatment guidelines. So with that, let me invite Dr. Huma Qureshi to add anything to her introduction and share her screen to present the topic for today.
So thank you, Danish, and thank you everybody for inviting me to speak. Can you see my screen?
We can, if you yes, now we can.
Right. Yeah. So thank you very much, Danish, and thank you to the Apna Merit boards and the committee members for inviting me to share my experience of working with the National Bioethics Committee and working with the Pakistan Medical Research Council. Why I'm here is actually because, since my graduation, I joined the Pakistan Medical Research Council way back in 1980s. And then over the years, as I got promoted, I became the executive director. And when I was there as the executive director, the National Bioethics Committee at that time was also formulated. And this was kind of made a part of the Pakistan Medical Research Council. And then the Pakistan Medical Research Council was renamed as the Pakistan Health Research Council. So I have seen all the transitions over these 35, 40 years that I was there with the Pakistan Medical Research Council. So I'm sharing the experience that we have had with the National Bioethics Committee. So these are my disclosures that I have no conflict of interest. So about the National Bioethics Committee, as I told you all earlier, that it was somewhere in early 2000 that my predecessor, Dr. Taslim Akhtar and General Aslam, were the people behind who kind of thought that there's a need to have a National Bioethics Committee in Pakistan, because before that there was no bioethics committee and the people were doing research, and then when they were submitting these research to the journals, their articles were being kind of sent back with a query that whether this has been cleared by the bioethics committee or not, and nobody knew that what is a bioethics committee. So this need was felt way back in 2000, and that's when people sat together and thought that there's a need to have a bioethics committee. So in 2004, this National Bioethics Committee was gazette notified by the Ministry of Health, and before that there was a lot of spade work which was done by many of our seniors. And I see Dr. Zafar Hayat also, he was also part of this committee working on all these things. So as I told you, because this was initiated by the Pakistan Medical Research Council, so this committee was then housed in the Pakistan Medical Research Council, and it was made the secretariat for the National Bioethics Committee. Then at that time, 2004, there was the health was not devolved, so it was called as the Ministry of Health. But then after devolution, now this ministry is called as the Ministry of National Health Services Regulations and Coordination. So now this is housed it is within the Ministry of National Health Services Regulation and Coordination, with the Pakistan Health Research Council as is the secretariat. So this is all about PMRC, PHRC, and the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of National Regulation Services and Coordination. But during all these transitions, the things continued, and the mission was never stopped. So what were the main aims of this National Bioethics Committee? Was that it was an advisory body. It was not a regulatory body. It was just an advisory body to advise the researchers on bioethics in health in Pakistan. And at that time, we had divided this ethics into two parts. One was to promote and facilitate Ethical Healthcare and Medical Education in Pakistan. And that committee was called as the Healthcare Ethics Committee. And then was the Ethical Health in Medical Research, or the Research Ethics Committee. So the main functions were to promote and facilitate ethical healthcare and medical education and health research within Pakistan. And then, because it was a national body, so there was a need that it should act like an umbrella body, which was linked to the other bioethical review committees of other organizations, medical colleges, universities, health institutions, health departments. So this was supposed to be a big umbrella body which was covering all other organizations. And its other use was that it was supposed to develop the guidelines on important health issues as and when they arose, so that people could be updated about the issues that they were facing as they were doing research and medical education. So this is the organogram of the National Bioethics Committee that you see. It's a National Bioethics, or NBC, with the Pakistan Medical Research Council or the Pakistan Health Research Council as its secretariat. And this is in Islamabad. And then we have two major committees. One is the Healthcare Ethics Committee, and the other is the Research Ethics Committee. And then the Secretariat also coordinates with the provincial and regional bioethics committees. So you see there are 4 provinces: Punjab, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Balochistan. And then the 2 regions, the Gilgit-Baltistan and the Azad Jammu and Kashmir. So by and large, there are 6 provincial or regional committees. So they also come under the National Bioethics Committee. And then under each province, there are many institutions which are doing, research. So each institution has to have their institutional bioethics committee, or the IRBs, or the institutional review committees. So that's how the organogram goes, that, the provincial committees have their own institutions under them, and then the provincial committees report to the National Bioethics Secretariat, and the Secretariat reports to the NBC in Pakistan. So what are its members and the composition? It's actually a committee comprising of almost about 30 people. So because it is a part of the government of Pakistan, it's a gazette notified body. So the patron is the minister of the ministry. Right now it's the Ministry of National Health Services Regulation and Coordination. And the chairperson is then the secretary of this ministry, and the vice chair is the DG. Because somebody within the ministry has to be there as one of the representatives, because many a times the minister or the secretary is unable to be there because of their commitments, but their presence is always there. They're always there to make decisions, and they're always there to support us. And then we have got 16 ex officio members. The ex officio members are members who are kind of selected because of their designations. So I'll take you through these, who are these ex officio members. So these are provincial director generals of health. There are 4 provinces, and then there are 2 regions, and then the Islamabad. So this makes 7 of them. Then we have got representatives from the Pakistan Medical and Dental Council, now called as the PMC. Then we have a representative from the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Pakistan, 1 representative from the Pakistan Medical or the Health Research Council, and 1 from the Higher Education Commission. So these are 4 other ex officio members. Then we have a representation from the World Health Organization, the WHO. We have a representation from the Supreme Court Bar Association, 1 representation from the Surgeon General of the Pakistan Army, 1 representation from the Family Physicians Association of Pakistan, and 1 from the Nursing Council. And then we have 14 members who are elected. And these elected members are from the public and private health departments of all the provinces, who have interest to serve on the National Bioethics Committee, and who kind of fulfill the qualifications to be on the National Bioethics Committee board. So that's about the people. And then the tenure of the membership is 4 years and is generally extendable to another 4 years. So by and large, members who have served for 8 years are replaced. Ex officio members, as I told you earlier, are appointed by designation. So whosoever is there, as the Director General, as the President of the CPSP or something, the ex officio, they would be appointed as per designations. And other members which are 14, are selected using very special criteria, which I'll take you through very quickly. So selection of the members is that, we cannot select the ex officio because they are by designation. So the other 14 that are selected depends upon the vacancy, because, sometimes there's a very special vacancy for like a religious scholar, or sometimes there's a vacancy for a gynae or an obstetrician or something. But although by and large, we don't want to be very specific to, the specialities, but then depending upon the vacancy, we send letters which are written by the National Bioethics Secretariat to all the heads of the medical colleges, hospitals, and other concerned societies to nominate a person. Because, if it's a society of physicians or a society of gastroenterologists, then these letters are sent to all these societies. The credentials are there, they're posted along with the letter. So the credentials received from these organizations, hospitals, or societies, when they're received, they're kind of, put in an evaluation sheet. And they're then circulated to the chair of the National Bioethics Committee. And then the chair then sends them to all the members for them to check and evaluate each member on the evaluation criteria. And then once the evaluations are done by the members, then they are shared by the secretariat, and then the final selection is made in the meeting. So there are very specific numberings which one has to give. It's not like yes or no, it's like numbering and the reasons why you number somebody as one or low or high. So and then those numbers are kind of counted, and then an aggregate is made out of them. So then generally there was a great confusion as to which project should be submitted to the National Bioethics Committee, because initially people thought that all the projects done by everybody should be submitted to the National Bioethics Committee. But then we knew our capacity, and we knew that we could not handle all those projects, and then that would really dilute the power of the provincial committees. So the NBC came down with very, very clear laid down criteria that projects which are funded from outside Pakistan would be cleared by the National Bioethics Committee. So any foreign funded project will have to go to National Bioethics Committee. The second criteria was that if the principal investigator or a co-investigator is from outside Pakistan, even if he or she is bringing a funding or is there without a funding, if there's a foreign co-investigator or investigator in the project, that project was also to be submitted to the NBC. Then giving the strengths to the Provincial Bioethics Committee, we thought that projects which are involving more than 2 provinces, like 4 provinces and 2 regions. So if there's a project which is involving 1 province, then this would be cleared by the provincial committee. If there is a project which is involved, which is going into 2 provinces, then again it would be cleared by the 2 provinces. But if it is more than 2 provinces, then should be submitted to the National Bioethics Committee, because then it becomes kind of almost a larger project. And then, we also had a lot of discussions with the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan, because there was the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan had some money to do to submit research projects. And then there are other projects which are submitted to DRAP from the pharmaceutical industry. And the DRAP also had their own committee, which was evaluating their projects and kind of approving them, or kind of, discarding them or reviewing them. So we had a lot of discussions with DRAP, and we thought that this was a conflict of interest for them, that these were projects which were coming to them through the DRAP, through the Drug Research Fund and through the pharmaceutical, so they cannot do this. And then finally we were able to convince them that the projects which were coming to the DRAP, or the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan, would also be reviewed by the National Bioethics Committee. And finally were the national surveys and the census, because for many years we saw that there were these census which occur every few years, and then there are other national surveys which are done. They need to be going through the clearance of the National Bioethics Committee. So by and large, these are 5 criteria for the projects which must come to National Bioethics Committee for clearance. So the process is that we have a website. It is available on both the NBC, or the National Bioethics Committee NBC website is there. And then if you go through the Pakistan Medical Research Council or the Pakistan Health Research Council, then there's a button of the NBC, and you press that. So you can go through 2 avenues. And there's a application, and there's a checklist attached with it, that what things one has to submit along with the project. So the projects can be submitted anytime, all around the year, so that there are no timelines for submission of the projects. And then the projects, when they are submitted, and they're generally like online submissions. We don't ask for hard copies, because that takes a lot of space, and there's a lot of wastage of paper. So we take online projects, and then the secretariat checks for any missing documents, and if there are some visibly deficient documents, then the secretariat would inform the person who is submitting, generally the principal investigator, to do the needful. And then once everything is complete, then the secretariat sends the project and its all related documents, like the consent form, the questionnaire, and the checklist and everything, to the chair of the Research Ethics Committee. So the chair then sends it to its members. There are about 7 members in the Research Ethics Committee, and there are about 7 or 8 members in the Ethics Review Committee. So the chair then sends it to its members for comments, and then the REC chair then sends the comments to all the NBC members, and then the NBC secretariat collates the comments and then sends them back to the chair for approval. And once the chair approves them, then the secretariat sends these comments to the investigator. So it's all online. So nothing is on paper. It's all done, through the computers. And it was very, very clearly decided that we have to really be very quick, and we have to be very positive. It's very easy to, question somebody or say that, this is wrong and this is wrong, but it is always very difficult to guide them as to what they should do so that the project can be made acceptable. So our first training to all our reviewers and all our members, new members, is that don't try to shoot an article or a project, try to give reasons as to what they should do, or give them comments as to what they should do, that would make it acceptable to you or to the reviewer or to the NBC. And the timelines are kind of very, very reasonable and very quick. We usually take and send back the reviews within 6 weeks. And generally it's before 6 weeks. Sometimes even this time is not, it looks tight to many people. So they ask for an expedited review. But then the reasons for this expedited review is generally very clear. And that is discussed with the committee. And if the committee agrees that, yes, there is a need to undertake an expedited review, then it is done. Otherwise, by and large, we try not to go for an expedited review, because our reviews are already quite pressed for time and are busy people and are really doing all this, without any charges. So we have to be very, very, flexible to them. So then the fees for the submission of the projects to the National Bioethics Committee are that if it's a foreign funded project or a project which has a foreign PI in the project working for the project, so that fees is about Pakistani rupees 50,000. But for the projects which are not foreign funded or which are local projects, the fees is only 20,000 rupees. Many a times people also ask for waivers in the fees, and this is only applicable for the locally funded projects, and that also is decided by the chair along with the discussion with the other members as to why a waiver should be given. Until and unless there are very strong reasons, the fees is paid, because this fees generally goes around for the secretariat to work for all this activity. It's not given as a fees to any reviewer, and it's not, and nobody's employed in the NBC. So this fees is generally used to run the secretariat. So as I told you earlier, that we have got two large subcommittees within the NBC. One is the Research Ethics Committee. So the Research Ethics Committee reviews bioethical aspects of the research projects, and it gives clearance suggestions before the projects are implemented. And then the second committee is the Healthcare Ethics Committee. And this committee works to ensure good bioethical practices in the healthcare and medical education. This committee also has worked very hard because we saw that in Pakistan there was a dearth about the ethical practices in healthcare and education. So it has developed booklets on bioethics for undergraduate medical and dental professionals to make them aware of the bioethical issues in medical practice and education. So these are small booklets which are available on the website, and which we generally ask the individuals to just scan through and go through, so that they have some flavor about the ethics and how to handle their patients and how to do the research in while working in the healthcare. And then we also have the provincial bioethics committees, and let me tell you that it took us quite a while to really pressurize and pursue the provincial health departments to develop their committees, because they thought that it was not their responsibility. And then the National Bioethics Committee had to really work with them, collaborate with them, train them. So we told them that all provinces should have their own provincial and regional bioethics committee, because that is their domain. The projects which are coming for the provinces, they should be dealt with by the provinces. They should not come to the national committee because that's their power. So Provincial Director General of Health is the chair of that committee. And then provincial committees have their own members. And then, as I told you, that there's a research ethics committee and there's a healthcare ethics committee. So within the members that are selected in the provincial committee, they themselves decide and volunteer to work for either the research ethics committee or the healthcare ethics committee. So all the projects which are related to the province or the region are generally dealt with within by these respective committees. It is only in case of a dispute at an institutional level, or in case where the provincial committee is not responding to the principal investigator, that the principal investigator can approach the National Bioethics Committee and ask for an opinion or a review. But by and large, we prefer that the provincial projects should go to the provincial committees. The National Bioethics Committee, as I told you earlier, facilitates the provincial and the regional health departments in the formulation of their committees and in the training of their members, because there's a regular training as to what is expected out of them, how would they go about it, what is their roles. So these are all done very, very regularly by the National Bioethics Committee as one of their prime functions. And then we have the Institutional Ethics Committee, and it says that all large institutions should have their own institutional ethics committee or the institutional review boards, with a very separate research committee and a very separate ethics committee. And these should be very separate, and this is where a lot of institutions are not very clear, and they think that their scientific review committee or the committee which reviews their project is an institutional ethics committee. And once it is cleared by their own reviewers or their own people, they submit the project saying that this has been cleared by their institutional committees. So institutional committees are very much there in many institutions, but many investigators kind of bypass this institutional committee and take the scientific review committee as the IRB. And once that is done, they just go on with the projects. So the institutions have to be really very vigilant to kind of see these shortcomings and respond to them before it's too late. So all projects undertaken by the students or the faculty are to be reviewed by the IRB. And then there were questions about, there are many institutions which are kind of small or which don't have that kind of a strength of to review the projects and to have the ethical committees. So it was decided that smaller institutions can request other institute to review their projects and can show a collaboration that, I will be using their committee to review my projects, and this is the committee that is there. So that's acceptable. So then, when the institutional committees were already there, there were quite a few institutions within Pakistan which have a very, very active institutional review committee, or the IRBs. So when these institutions were informed that they even have to submit their projects to the provincial committees or to the national bioethics committees, we kind of saw a lot of resistance from them, because they thought that their committees are very, very good and they're reviewing the projects for them for many years, so there's no need for them. So this was very clearly reiterated to them, that all institutions which are public or private will have to submit their projects which fall in the category that needs a clearance by the National Bioethics Committee before implementing these projects to the national and international fora. And this submission was mandatory. Otherwise, this would be there would be issues with them. So this is some I recall many occasions where there was a lot of resistance coming from the larger institutions which had their own committees, and they did not want to come under the National Bioethics Committee. So then the training and the capacity building by the National Bioethics Committee, as I told you, that being the umbrella body with people of very, very high caliber and trained, the National Bioethics Committee assists in the training of the members of the provincial and the institutional committees. And these trainings are held regularly by the NBC, but this is always upon the request of either a province or an institution. So these are not like by default. Whenever there's a need, the institution of that province writes to the provincial committee, and either the provincial committee undertakes the training, or if the provincial committee finds it difficult to undertake on their own, then they request the NBC to do it. So in either way, a request has to come. And as I told you, that this request generally is again routed through the provincial committees, just to let people know, or the institutions know, that there is a provincial committee which is there to help them, and that should not be bypassed. Then I told you that there were some documents which have been developed by the National Bioethics Committee. So some of these I'm sharing with AU. The first one that was developed by the NBC was the Physician Pharma Interaction Guidelines. And these were developed because of the very strong relationship that we see within the physicians and the pharmaceutical industry. And sometimes this relation goes to such an extent that it makes all of us, make us shy of whatever is happening. So these guidelines were then made public, and they were sent to all the pharmaceutical associations and to all the societies of the Pakistan to let them know that this is what is expected of them and this is what they should do. And so these guidelines are there, although they're not kind of, because we are not an implementing authority. So we have made them public, we have printed them, we have posted them in our website, and they're available for reference. Then there is stem cell guidelines, because at one time, there was this huge outbreak of, researchers and institutions working on the stem cells. Just to regulate them, there was this need to have these stem cell guidelines as to who can do it and who cannot do it. And then their registrations and everything was kind of made part of this, guidelines, so that we knew that who was doing what. And then there was this liver transplant guidelines, because when the liver transplant started, so we thought that, like the kidney transplant, when the Pakistan kind of entered into a business of, import of the people who were kind of coming from outside and making money and buying the kidneys from Pakistan, it was kind of shameful. So we thought that when the liver transplant was starting, that this should not happen. So straight away, these liver transplant guidelines were made, and they were kind of, put along with the other organ transplant guidelines. And then there was this issue of the storage and the transportation of the biological material within the country and abroad. So these guidelines were being developed, and meanwhile, the Foreign Office from the federal government also had issues, because they were also, getting requests of transfer of these biological materials from Pakistan outside, and sometimes the materials were coming inside. So somehow, the two of us were kind of working on the same thing at one time. And when the Foreign Office found out that, we were already working on it and we had developed these guidelines, so they kind of straight away came in, they saw our guidelines, and then they had some tweaking done, and then they endorsed it. So now these guidelines are with the Foreign Office also, and these guidelines are also with the NBC, and they're also part of the project submission guidelines if there's a foreign, if there's a material transport there. And then the Healthcare Ethics Committee, as I told you, these handbooks for the physicians, for the doctors, and for the dentists have also been developed. So Healthcare Ethics Committee have developed these handbooks. So all these materials are available at the Pakistan Health Research Council and the National Bioethics Committee website. And Pakistan Medical and Dental Council at that time, now it's PMC, it has endorsed all these guidelines. So that's very good that we have had endorsement from the highest body to endorse that, these are the guidelines that should be followed. So thank you very much. This was all that I could share with you, and then obviously we'll have some questions, so that we can go ahead and maybe answer some of the questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Qureshi. This was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great summary. I have a lot of questions, and I've been making notes, and I have so many things I want to ask. I also am delighted that we have a really good panel of our leaders and subcommittee chairs from Merit here, who are involved in research personally, who could do collaboration of research in Pakistan. They are working on research committees. And so I would love to also involve them in discussion. But before I do all of that, let me remind everyone, you can put your questions in Q&A box. You can raise your hand. You will enjoy this Q&A that we will have. A lot of things need to be addressed, and I think it will be excellent discussion here onwards. Let me first start by inviting one of my colleague and dear friend from Pakistan, Professor Akhtar Shireen, who I especially invited, who reached out to me very excited about this session. And I personally invited him because he has been developing a lot of medical journals in Pakistan and being an editor. And I think that's one of the key function is to make sure when we're publishing research, it's an ethical research that was done, and we have to have some check and balance when publishing it. So Professor Shireen, please go ahead and mute yourself and make your comments.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Dr. Danish. It was a wonderful presentation. Nice to see you, Dr. Hum, after a long time. No doubt that research ethic is the most neglected part of this country. Unfortunately, I will just shortly give a brief an episode, because when we applied once in 21 years ago for ethical approval, we were doing a project with the Oxford University, and we could not get any ethical committee for that. And luckily on January 28, 2004, to be precisely, it was announced by the Federal Ministry to have the National Bioethical Committee. But unfortunately, the first meeting occurred after 28 months. So that was a very unfortunate thing right from the start. And I'm glad that recently during the COVID, they had the rapid turnover reviews, and I was glad to have these sort of things. But unfortunately, there are many gray areas which we have to look at it. The first thing is, in my opinion, it was started with an umbrella body. And then there were provincial ethical committees and research X were there. But there is the same thing happens, because I am member of the Provincial Ethical Committee for the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and I haven't attended any meeting for that. There were training opportunities given, and Farad Bazam and Amir Jafri came a few years ago, and they had a training session for 2 days in Peshawar. And then nothing happened after that, and no meeting was held. Unfortunately, committees are there, research ethical committees are there, institutional ethical committees are there, but they are almost, it may be generalizable, but these are rubber stamping committees, unfortunately. I've been to the receiving end of as an editor. So whenever I see the reports given by the ethical committee, they have no meeting ID, no meeting number, no date of meeting, and just stamped by anybody that ethical approval was granted. We have to look at this, who will monitor these ethical committees? Is there any ethical body who will register these ethical committees? Who will accredit these ethical committees, institutional ethical committee? And is there any regulatory body who will be responsible? The National Ethical Committee, there is that every international project or interprovincial project has to submit to take approval from the National Ethics Board. But what will happen if if nobody applies for that? And because international agencies are seeking the institutional ethical committees approval, who will control these things? Then the role of DRAP, you have defined recently that they were asking for it, and I'm glad that they have given you the mandate to review their projects. But that is also questionable. And then again, the training, who will train these ethical committee members? I'm glad you have been good training opportunities, but even on this website of your organization, the last the training imparted is mentioned in Quetta and in Gilgit in 2016. You have not updated your even website that I attended a couple of years ago a meeting, but it has not been reflected on your website. So things are need to be looked at in very seriously. And then some other areas I would like to identify is the publication ethics is very much neglected. You give approval for the project, then there is no monitoring unit. There is no research integrity office in Pakistan, in none of the university. I've written these again and again in my editorials. I'll share one of my editorial about the ethical committees as well here on the and the chat box. And I will share another on the research integrity. Then there is a no clinical trial registry in Pakistan. I've written editorial on this as well 5, 6 years ago. So these are the areas which we need to focus on it if you want to improve the research in Pakistan, research culture in Pakistan. I'm glad that APNA is doing a lot and they have focused research on it. It's the most neglected part, and the ethics is the most neglected part in Pakistan. And monitoring and is very much important, and we need to think over it. And I hope something will happen in the near future, inshallah.
Thank you, Dr. Shireen. So, Dr. Qureshi, before you respond, let me just add maybe a more broader question that I have been wondering about. You mentioned a couple of times that your committee is not an enforcement committee, does not have any teeth, does not have enforcement or regulation or things like that. So I wonder who's your enforcement partner, who is the implementation partner to say, okay, ethics are being implemented, or there are punitive penalties to those who are not following it, and what is a good way for someone to look up and say, okay, this trial has an ethical approval and this trial does not. Is there a possibility of a national clinical trial database which can post their IRB approval status, IRB number, enrollment sites, or what was the initial proposal? So like clinicaltrials.gov is a place you can go easily and you can see if the trial has been registered and what's the IRB number and what are the sites, who are the investigators. And so is there a possibility of having something where you can just easily quickly look up if this clinical trial was put in or request for an approval for ethical approval or not? And I'll let you respond to all of these and Dr. Sheen's comment if you want.
Okay. Okay, I'll respond to your question first, because that's kind of not easy, but still, like I fully agree with you that at one time there was a lot of discussions within the National Bioethics Committee. That this is just an advisory body, and if somebody doesn't take an advice, then what do you do? Because this committee does not have the power to go and stop somebody. If somebody wants to do a trial and doesn't want to bring it to the NBC, then we as a committee cannot do this. We can just inform the PI that this is not right and you're not doing it. If it's a pharmaceutical doing it, and this is what we have done many a times, that we write to the pharmaceutical industry that this trial is undergoing and it has not had a clearance from us. That's it. But actually, to be very true, there is no punitive body which can kind of really go and stop the trial, because until and unless there is some very drastic reasons for it, I have not yet seen a trial being stopped by NBC, because then the NBC becomes a whistleblower to either the province or to the federal government, that this is a trial which is being undertaken, and we feel that they should have a clearance from us, or we have not given a clearance to this trial, so can you please have a look at this and check it. And that's the best that we can do. But yeah, we don't have any regulatory power, neither we have the power to go and stop somebody. So that's for true. And then I was with the NBC till my retirement, which is in 2017. And then as I told you that the trainings are generally done on the request of the institution of the province. Dr. Akhtar says that he did attend a training, but probably the website has not been updated. I would agree with him that, if that is not updated, I will probably let the people who are dealing with the website to let them know that these need to be updated. But since almost 2 years now, there's no meeting, there's no training, it's all online. So things have really slowed up. And what I see is that, since devolution, the powers of the provinces have been increased. And we have all the time been trying to really empower the provincial committees by telling them that, look, this is your mandate, please do this, this is your mandate. And because the Director General of the Health of the province is also a member of the National Bioethics Committee, so we kind of really push them there that, you have to make your own committees, make them visible, make them powerful, empower them, and, do this. But by and large, I agree with Dr. Akhtar that, provincial committees have been very, very slow in all the provinces. It's not KPK, it's the same in Punjab, it's the same in Sindh. By and large, we still see, and you will still see, that the projects are sent to the National Bioethics Committee because they think that there's a very active committee which responds well, which does the thing much quickly, rather than sending it to the provincial committees. But I think as Pakistanis and as researchers and as scientists, we have to really push our committees to really help us, help them and train them and push them that, they need to kind of stand up, wake up, and really, start showing up that they are there. But these are very, very personal things which, you can just kind of push them, but you can't really go and make them stand.
Thank you, Dr. Qureshi. So I see a lot of people have questions to ask. I know my committee chairs have tons of questions to ask, but let me quickly ask some very short structural questions, things I wasn't clear on. And if you can just very briefly answer them, that'll be great, so we can go on to other people's comment. So one question I had was that you talked about fees, which are very reasonable. It's about $300 for a foreign funded research. Clinical trials here, IRB fees anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 that we have to pay. But we do sometimes make distinct between, is it an industry funded trial versus investigator initiated trial versus government funded trial. If it's an investigator initiated trial, we often waive off these fees because they're doing it on their own. The department may or may not give them any funding. They're spending already their voluntary time to try to do them. Do you have these kind of classification or to look at?
Yeah, actually, not to that extent, but yeah, that what I told you, that if it's an individual who's doing a research, that's when we ask, they generally ask for a waiver, and we do give them a waiver. But if it's an industry, or if it's a foreign funded, or if it's a local industry, for us, they're all, like the fee structure remains the same. And
Wonderful.
This fee structure has been the same since almost 2004. It has not really been enhanced.
Yeah,
So
a quick question about submission. Do you guys have any templates that you provide for IRB application or national NBC application for investing?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a one pager. Apart from the whole project, there's one pager which one has to fill in, and there are a few things that have to be filled in apart from the name and the address and the PIs.
Okay. And once a study is approved, do you require any annual review? And then do you have a category for IRB exempt studies like we have here?
So like once we approve them, then we ask them generally to submit an information whether they've completed the project or not. And if they for any reason ask for an extension, then we obviously ask them the reason for an extension. But if it's an unreasonable extension, then they generally have to resubmit the project all over again. Or if they want to add another site, then even we want them to resubmit it, because to us that looks like unethical. But that's
okay. Wonderful. So another last quick question is that one way of enforcement that's done here is that there is an investigator training required for anyone to participate in research. We call it CT training, CITI. It was initially developed by University of Nebraska, but is now a national training. So any IRB, national or central or local, or to be able to participate in research, there is an enforced training, and it expires 2 years. So every 2 year, you have to review the training and then take an exam and have a CT certificate, and that has to be on file with your institution and with any multi-center trial. So do you have any plans for online clinical education, providing trainings, or maybe a requirement of certification for, to have an ethical certificate before doing human studies?
It was, like I left the position almost about 3 years back, but at that time it was being discussed that we should have these kinds of prerequisites so that we are at par with the other committees, and then there is a need to identify the real researchers from those who are just kind of there to become the ghost authors or the writers. So yeah, this was in the pipeline, but I can positively find out whether there's a progress on this or not. But at that time, there wasn't. There were just simple trainings which are going on. Yeah.
Okay. Let me start with our subcommittee chairs before I go on to audience for their questions. So let me invite the chair for our research committee, Professor Mustafa Siddiqui. Please go ahead, Dr. Mustafa.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Huma Qureshi, for the presentation, and congratulations for all the achievements which you have done. My question is that, I'm trying to envision in a place like Pakistan, where the challenges are of providing resources for an IRB and having the right type of training for the IRB, and an IRB maintaining a certain quality so that it is able to protect human subjects research and as well as satisfy the international requirements. So there's a concept of central IRB versus local IRB. And to me, it seems like that in a setting like Pakistan, I see 3 layers of protection, or you can also say that 3 layers of bureaucracy, where there's a national, provincial, as well as a local. In your ideal case, in your wish list, based on you have been in this field for a very long time, do you think one way or the other, like either a central IRB which meets a really requirements of the international standards, or a local IRB, then there are institutions in Pakistan who meet international standards by any level. What would be your thoughts on them? The idea is that when one of the things is that foreign clinical trials should come to Pakistan. Right now, they're going to India in a big way, and that can provide there are many benefits, and I'm not going to go over that. But then many of these trials already pass through the Office of Good Practices from FDA. So a basic ethics requirement has been reviewed, and then of course the national demands have to be met. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Dr. Mustafa, I fully agree with you that, but the international trials which come to Pakistan, there have been many trials which I can recall that came from outside Pakistan for the phase 2 and phase 3 trials, and they were cleared by the Bioethics Committee. But I have not seen, frankly, I have not seen any project which was kind of rejected by the NBC, which came to Pakistan from outside for reasons that, we were unable to, support it or clear it or whatever. So I fully agree with you that Pakistan is capable of getting these trials, and this would not only strengthen us, but would also strengthen the institutions and all others. But unfortunately, there is some other reason that they go to India and they don't come to Pakistan, which is kind of more political rather than academic. And but we have the capacity to do these. But the institutional committees, by and large, Dr. Mustafa, are dealing with the small projects that these students or these postgraduates do to get their exams clearance. The College of Physicians requirement, the PhD requirements, the MS requirements. So these are small projects that these students have to do to acquire, the post graduations. So these trials we generally do not recommend to come to the National Bioethics Committee, and we want the institutions to clear their own, projects. But then, as I told you, that their review committee cannot be their IRB. But for the NBC, it is always the foreign funded, as I told you, that if it's a phase 2 or phase 3 trial coming to Pakistan, it would be foreign funded. So foreign funded projects with the PI from outside, they have to come to Pakistan. They have been coming to Pakistan, but I can probably count them, that not more than 7 or 8. In COVID now we have had about maybe 10 more which came from outside Pakistan. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Qureshi. I think, Dr. Mustafa, there might be opportunities to talk about a collaboration for creating that kind of a national city training or a research investigator, PI, kind of a training where the Merit Research Committee might be able to help build that and provide platforms and education. Let me invite Professor Sarwat Hussain, who's the chair of our Merit AI Subcommittee on Artificial Intelligence and also member of the Research Committee. So Professor Sarwat, please go ahead.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Saiba, for a very good presentation. But I have a general comment and then some specific comment. The general comment is, unfortunately, then our dear countries' organizations are generally underfunded, and the accountability is usually not there, and the interest is in doing the paperwork and making it look on the paper without implementation. Unfortunately, I think this committee is also subject to our approach. My specific question is that I know, Dr. Saiba, you have been away for 3 years, but to your recollection, how many projects do you or have you been receiving for approval, and how many were approved and how many were sent back for more comments, and how many were rejected? And was there any other method of assuring some kind of accountability to those people who do not conform to or who violate the guidelines? And lastly, if there is a complaint from a patient who got hurt from the unethical behavior of researchers, what is their recourse? Thank you. I will mute my.
Okay. So, Dr. Sarwat, thank you for the questions. What I recall is that, there were generally about 80 or 75 to 80 projects that we used to review every year. And if I recall, and I actually removed that slide which was there because I thought that how many we review every year didn't look, I thought there wasn't a need. So, but I recall that there are about 70 to 80 projects that we would receive every year. And then because the intention was to support research and not to reject it, so comments were most, I don't recall that at any time it was like the first go it was done. It was always, the comments, the consent. By and large, there was a lot of issue with the consent. There was a lot of issue with the, monetary support that was incentive which was given, so that was removed. So sometimes the fees, the project fees was unrealistic, and we had a lot of discussions. These were a lot of projects which were coming from the British Council. So the fee structure was too much for the PIs and the support staff, and we really made a lot of push on that. But if I recall, the rejections were not many. there were about 4 or 6 rejections. Some, apart from these, there were few which were retracted by the APIs once the comments were sent to them. So they said that they would like to withdraw. But by and large, most were reviewed, and then the comments were sent, and then they complied to the comments, and then they were agreed upon to.
Thank you, Dr. Raishi. Let me invite the chair of our HIV subcommittee for merit, Dr. Fiza Gilani, who's also a true thorough researcher. Dr. Gilani, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Umar. Thank you very much for this informative presentation. I have a few just questions, if you can please kindly respond to them. One is, do we have any bioethics courses offered at medical colleges or even pre-med schools? If not, is there any plan about that? Number two is, I completely agree with Dr. Danish, to CT courses or IRB courses should be offered to faculty, students, and any researcher who wants to do medical research. And their continuity every 2 years, like to recertify themselves. And this is what we do, all means everyone does it here. And we cannot write any new proposal until our CT certification is up to date.
Thank you, Dr. Gilani.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Feza. So I'll probably say no. We right now in our curriculum, unfortunately, there's nothing like a bioethical course. And we have been pushing the curriculum committee and all the College of Physicians and everybody that there's a need. But things are very difficult to change. In Pakistan, sometimes our hands are tied. So that was the reason that the Healthcare Ethics Committee then developed those small booklets, so that at least the students and the undergraduates could at least have those booklets to see as to what ethics is and what research is. But yeah, you are right that there should be a course, but unfortunately to date, the curriculum does not have anything on the bioethics at all. And so is the training of the researchers using the CT courses, because the researcher and anybody can write a proposal. There's no training, there's no certification, but these are things that have to be taken, and I'll probably push it to the committee to kind of see what they're doing in this. I'll positively pass it on to them.
Thank you. I see a hand raised by Dr. Zafar Hayat. Dr. Hayat, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and ask a question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Batista. And I congratulate and have great respect for Dr. Umar Qureshi. We had been sharing way back, having been members of LBC areas from KPK, Peshawar, Pakistan. And we worked very hard. Farhat Muazzam, if I remember correctly, the chairman at that time of NBC, conducted across the country, very organized, very impactful and innovative sort of meetings, very frequent across the country, every province. And this was based on immediately stem cells, guidelines, and organ transplant guidelines. We worked on biological products, good medical practice, and it has impacted very well way back. But I would just request you that the good governance of all the institutions, whatever, are dependent on the good governance of the country governance. If the governments change, they may modify the policies, they may continue it, they may innovate it, but they should take U-turns on what has already been developed. That is unfortunate thing that we take U-turn. And we say that the previous people were incompetent, and we are very competent. So that is not a good thing. We should be having a national-based thinking. We should have international respects for our institutions, because we will only have international impacts if we have adopted the international standards. And for that reason, we don't have to have politics in the institutions. It should not be monopolized. I would say that initially, when Huma Qureshi, myself, and all of our committees at that time, and the firm worked very well. Why? Because at that time, there was not mushrooming of medical colleges, medical universities, and the expansion, the ever expansion of the private practice and the public practices, medical colleges came in. The country was not geared up to manage it, and therefore chaos came. I would share with Dr. Shireen his comments, which are very negative, and I think it was because of their interest or lack of interest as well. He was my student, and he is a very diligent and very research-minded person. But if things have not been working well, I think we should have gone and told the central office that why these meetings are not happening. But we are also involved in private practice. We hardly have time for research. We talk too much of research, but have we ever audited ourselves that what the physicians, the surgeons, I mean the healthcare providers have provided, added to the research development in Pakistan? We used to travel across Karachi and Lahore and Islamabad, leaving our clinics, leaving our families, and going. Few of us are doing it now. Why? I mean, we should audit ourselves. We should start from the ground level, from bottom to top. And the top should also go from top to bottom, and we should audit ourselves. What I mean to say, I can just tell you, devolve, like Mustafa Qureshi said, devolve the things to the provincial level. And this should go to the universities. It should not go around in the health department. What does DG Health know about research? Secretary Health and everybody. They are very good on the management side. But research is only and only based in universities. And the university-wide snapshot should be taken on merit by the HEC. And then the central bureaus or offices of NBC and research should only deal with the universities and HEC. And then they should do audit. Nobody should be promoted without having written research papers, standard research papers, which are approved by the HEC standards and by ethical committee standards. And once you put this thing on the doctors, practicing doctors, research is done by the doctors, by the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are the professors, the assistant professor, the assistant professor. अब प्रोफेसर आदमी बन जाता है, वो आगे कुछ पेपर ही नहीं लिखता है, क्योंकि उसको तो कहते हैं बस मैं तो खान बन गया हूँ. नहीं, अमेरिका में, यूरोप में ये चीजें इसलिए चल रही हैं कि उन लोगों की ऑडिट होती है. हम उतरते 60 मार्क्स आपको लेने पड़ते थे अमेरिका में. जब तक आपने इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस अटेंड नहीं किए थे, which you carry 20 marks, and national conference 10 marks. 60 marks you had to adopt to approve for CME and CPD. अब CME CPD पाकिस्तान में अब नहीं करेंगे तो आपके, मैं कन्वीनर हूँ पाकिस्तान मेडिकल काउंसिल की इंस्पेक्शन का मेडिकोलॉजिस्ट का. मैं चाहता हूँ सब कुछ ठीक होता है. जब मैं रिसर्च पे आता हूँ तो ना तो कोई रिसर्च डिपार्टमेंट होता है, अगर होता है पेपर्स में होता है, ना कोई रिसर्च वर्क तो होता है, और ना उनकी जर्नल कोई स्टैंडर्ड की होती है. तो वहां पर वो बेचारे टप जाते हैं. प्राइवेट भी, और खैबर मेडिकल कॉलेज जैसे कॉलेज was deferred, which is the mother college of all the colleges. You know, it was deferred for lacking research facility.
Professor,
And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we're running out of time. So my
Naturally,
apologies.
I'm sorry to say, but this is what I say. You should devolve it, have good governance, और प्लीज यू टर्न्स इसको कहें डालें जो भी है, और अपना के साथ अपना वो ताल्लुक रखें उन लोगों के साथ जो हमारे प्रोफेसर जो बैठे हुए हैं हमारे, ताकि वो आपको गाइड करें, हमें गाइड करें.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr.
I salute Huma Qureshi for having been so much involved in research, and I salute her. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, on that positive note, let me just ask one last question from Dr. Qureshi to conclude the session for today. Dr. Qureshi, Dr. Abdul Rashid साहब यहाँ पे हैं हमारे साथ और he's the chairman of Clinical Studies Committee in DRAP. उन्होंने बड़ा pertinent question पूछा है. I'm not sure if you are familiar or with that or not. लेकिन question ये है कि जब अब ये जो reformatting हो रही है NIH की और पाकिस्तान हेल्थ रिसर्च काउंसिल को डिवॉल्व करके या इंटीग्रेट करके NIH में लाया जा रहा है, तो नेशनल बायोएथिक्स कमेटी का क्या फ्यूचर आप देखती हैं या आपके नॉलेज में क्या है? एंड विल कंक्लूड द सेशन आफ्टरवर्ड्स.
जी, thank you. और रशीद साहब, अस्सलाम वालेकुम. We have been colleagues when we were together in Islamabad. So yeah, actually this is a vision of the Prime Minister that National Institute of Health के अंदर जो है वो Pakistan Medical Research Council, Nursing Council और the regulatory authorities और जितने इदारे हैं वो उसके अंदर चले गए हैं. So it's a presidential order, but उसमें उनकी entity खत्म नहीं हुई है. They will still be like the NIH. NIH के अंदर ये सारे इदारे होंगे, NIH के ऊपर Ministry of Health होगी. So the इदारास will remain the same. उनके लोग भी जो हैं वो सब वही रहेंगे, उनके जो काम हैं वो भी सब चलेंगे. So ये काम नहीं रुकेंगे, रिसर्च नहीं रुकेगी, बायोएथिक्स नहीं रुकेगी, but they're kind of all being brought under one roof so that it's easy to manage them. So that's what I know of. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think my takeaway lessons जो हैं, what I'm getting from all the discussion today is, number one, we need to create educational resources for everyone, but number two, create some method of enforcement, either through IRB protocol numbers requirement or through education certificate requirement or something like that. And number three, we need to allow Bioethics Committee to charge enough fees to sustain itself, to have a self-sustaining model, बजाय इसके कि जी वो taxpayer से ही पैसे आते हैं. तो जो industry है वो very well funded है, foreign research very well funded है. The fees should be at least comparable to the international standard international fees. So with that, I thank everyone, and I especially thank you, Dr. Qureshi, for taking the time out and being with us.
Thank you, Danish, and thank you, everybody. My pleasure, and agree. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz. Thank you for joining.
Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz. Thank you, everyone.